Thank you for joining with me as we continue our exploration of A Course in Miracles. In this video, we'll be continuing our reading of chapter 20, and we will be practicing lesson number 38 together, and then we'll review a principle of miracles. So to that, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And I'm going to click on Read A Course in Miracles, clicking on the text, scrolling down in the table of contents to chapter 20, the vision of holiness. And today we are in section number 7, the consistency of means and end. So let's begin with paragraph 1. We have said much about discrepancies of means and end and how these must be brought in line before your holy relationship can bring you only joy. But we have also said the means to meet the Holy Spirit's goal will come from the same source as does his purpose. Being so simple and direct, this course has nothing in it that is not consistent. The seeming inconsistencies or parts you find more difficult than others are merely indications of areas where means and end are still discrepant, and this produces great discomfort. This need not be. This course requires almost nothing of you. It is impossible to imagine one that asks so little or could offer more. Okay, so I just want to remind us here that the course has instructed that the only thing that's required is a little willingness, and then the Holy Spirit, the Creator, our Father, does the rest. It's just simply our willingness. So I'll continue reading with paragraph 2. The period of discomfort that follows the sudden change in a relationship from sin to holiness may now be almost over. To the extent you still experience it, you're refusing to leave the means to him who changed the purpose. You recognize you want the goal. Are you not also willing to accept the means? If you're not, let us admit that you are inconsistent. A purpose is attained by means, and if you want a purpose, you must be willing to want the means as well. How can one be sincere and say, I want this above all else, and yet I do not want to learn the means to get it? So this reminds me of when I, somewhere along the way, had picked up this intent that no matter what, I wanted to abide in the consciousness of God, that my mind, that my consciousness was the same as God's. And so my question was, so what is the fastest path to abiding in God consciousness, to know God as myself, to really embody that unique God spark and to fulfill my divine purpose, to fulfill my divine potential? And so leading with this question, I have embarked on several spiritual pilgrimages. And so this paragraph is reminding me of the second spiritual pilgrimage. The first spiritual pilgrimage, I went to France to commune with the energy and even to a certain extent the personality of Saint Bernadette, which I did. And it was to her that I proposed my question, which is, what is the fastest path to abiding in God consciousness? And then the second pilgrimage was to commune with and connect with the energy and to a certain extent the personality of Saint Teresa of Avila. And so I went to Spain to connect with her there and present with her and ask her the same question: what is the fastest path to abiding in God consciousness? Just for reference, the third spiritual pilgrimage was back in France to walk the path, to follow the path of Joan of Arc, and also proposed to her the same question. Because each of these saints were mystics. They heard the voice of the divine and they followed the direction that the voice gave them. So when I arrived in Avia, it was after I had already done a 5-day silent meditation retreat that was Zen based through the teacher, Linda Clare, who is also from Australia. And that was in Cordoba in Spain. And so then I made my way to Avia. Avia is a walled city, and my accommodations was just on the outer wall of the city, and then the streets inside of the town, of the village, are quite convoluted, quite complex, and it's really easy to get lost. None of it really seems to make sense, and the buildings more or less look the same, and Spanish is not my first, not my second, not my third language, and so it's a thing. You need a map. But when I asked Saint Teresa to join with me, to walk with me, I felt her presence and she was with me. And while she was with me, I knew somehow my way around Avia. And it was easy for me to get around. I intuitively knew where to go. And so I invited Teresa to sit with me at every meal, to walk with me, to show me the monastery where she had served. And so Saint Teresa, just to give you some background, was a 16th century Carmelite nun, and she was very prolific. She founded many, many monasteries under the Carmelite order. So when I connected with her, she felt very stoic, very mature, almost like a school mom, like a house mistress. And so when she was with me, I presented her my question, what is the fastest path to abide in God consciousness? And her answer, which was consistent and persistent, was that I needed to make God the most important thing. I needed to fill my mind with God, that God was all that was important. And at the time, I couldn't fathom that as a mission. I couldn't fathom that as an achievable or sustainable prescription. So as she sat with me and as she persistently and consistently gave me that answer, to make God everything, that everything I do has to be with God in mind and for God, to fill my mind with God. And so I would discuss this with her, and I would say things like, yes, but, how about? And they were things like, yes, but how about I'm spending some time with my friends and we're enjoying a nice bottle of wine and enjoying good food and good, silly banter. And she would be quite dismissive of that kind of thing. It felt like she considered that frivolous and a waste of time. So again, she was quite stern, quite strict. And by the end of the second to last day that I was to be there, I felt her get fed up and leave. And so what was so interesting about that was that when she left, I suddenly couldn't find my way around Avia. I was completely lost. She left me in a restaurant, and so then I had to find the outer wall and follow the wall all the way around to get back to my hotel. But I'm sharing this story because in this paragraph, it talks about the means to the end. It says, you recognize you want the goal, which was the same as me. I wanted the goal to abide in God consciousness. And then this paragraph says, and are you not also willing to accept the means? And so this story is sharing that at that time, I wasn't actually. She was giving me the means, and I wasn't willing to do that at that time. The paragraph then continues to say, if you're not, let us admit that you are consistent, which is true, because so in my mind, I have had a very clear longing to receive the answer in order to achieve the means to abide in God consciousness, to know God as myself, to, as I said, to attain my divine potential as a human being here in this lifetime. And yet, when I was earnestly, paranormally being given the answer, more or less my personality rejected it. And so that's the inconsistency. So the paragraph is saying if you want a purpose, so if you want to know the truth, if you want redemption, if you want salvation, if you want to experience the holy instant, which is to remember your eternal nature, you must be willing to want the means as well. And it says, how can one be sincere and say, I want this above all else, and yet I do not want to learn the means to get it? So perfect. So, all right. So I'm going to go ahead now and continue with paragraph 3. To obtain the goal, the Holy Spirit indeed asks little. He asks no more to give the means as well. The means are second to the goal. And when you hesitate, it's because the purpose frightens you and not the means. Remember this, for otherwise you'll make the error of believing the means are difficult. Yet, how can they be difficult if they're merely given you? They guarantee the goal, and they're perfectly in line with it. Before we look at them a little closer, remember that if you think they are impossible, your wanting of the purpose has been shaken. For if a goal is possible to reach, the means to do so must be possible as well. And so this is basically telling me what was happening for me in that experience, in that second pilgrimage. So I showed up, I had my question, but then when push came to shove, I hesitated because I'm being told here that the purpose frightened me. And so because the purpose frightened me, it means that I also made the means difficult. This paragraph is saying, but how could the means be difficult if they're given to you, if they're merely given you? So here we're being asked to remember that if you think they are impossible, your wanting of the purpose has been shaken, which we could say was true for the story that I shared. And then finally, for if a goal is possible to reach, the means to do so must be possible as well. And so many of the healing arts teach us that it's all in the power of the mind, and whatever is conceivable within the mind is possible. It's just a matter of how it unfolds given the restrictions of time. But what I love about the Course in Miracles is that it reminds us that from our eternal nature's point of view, there is no such thing as time, that time is an illusion. Let's continue to paragraph 4. Let's see what happens next. It is impossible to see your brother as sinless and yet to look upon him as a body. Is this not perfectly consistent with the goal of holiness? For holiness is merely the result of letting the effects of sin be lifted. So what was always true is recognized. To see a sinless body is impossible, for holiness is positive and the body is merely neutral. It is not sinful, but neither is it sinless. As nothing, which it is, the body cannot meaningfully be invested with attributes of Christ or of the ego. Either must be in error, for both would place the attributes where they cannot be, and both must be undone for purposes of truth. Wow, fascinating. Okay, so remember that sin is lovelessness within the context of the Course in Miracles. And so here we're being shown that the body is inherently neutral. So it is neither filled with ego, which it isn't because the ego belongs to mind, and it neither shares the attributes of Christ because our Christ consciousness is within consciousness. It is not within the physical body. So interesting, right? That we cannot find Christ in the body. But what I find through meditation practices and the Eastern healing art practices is that more the body is a bridge. The body is a portal. The Course in Miracles has called it a speck of dust. Also a tool that the ego uses to hide in. So let's keep going to hear more about the body for paragraph 5. The body is the means by which the ego tries to make the unholy relationship seem real. The unholy instant is the time of bodies, but the purpose here is sin. It cannot be attained but in illusion. And so the illusion of a brother as a body is quite in keeping with the purpose of unholiness. Because of this consistency, the means remain unquestioned while the end is cherished. Seeing adapts to wish, for sight is always secondary to desire. And if you see the body, you have chosen judgment and not vision. For vision, like relationships, has no order. You either see or not. Okay? And so the relationship is either holy or it isn't. So within the unholy instant, which is the experience of life as it is now, the purpose here is sin, meaning lovelessness. And so that construct, lovelessness, can only be attained in illusion. Because from the Course in Miracles point of view, truth is love. So that which is unloving, that which is loveless, must be sin. So when we're seeing our brothers and sisters through that lens, then we are not sharing God's vision. The use of vision here in the Course in Miracles is to see truth, to see eternity, to see that which is eternal, to see grace, to see innocence, to see without guilt, to see without fear, and so on. So let's continue for paragraph 6, because I think the theme continues. Who sees a brother's body has laid a judgment on him and sees him not. He does not really see him as sinful. He does not see him at all. In the darkness of sin, he's invisible. He can but be imagined in the darkness, and it is here that the illusions you hold about him are not held up to his reality. Here are illusions and reality kept separated. Here are illusions never brought to truth and always hidden from it. And here in darkness is your brother's reality imagined as a body in unholy relationships with other bodies, serving the cause of sin an instant before he dies. Okay, so what happens when we meet one another through our physical eyes? We take in the physical attributes, and the mind naturally makes conscious and subconscious judgments about it. And this overlay prevents us from seeing what is true. And that which is true is to see their innocence, to see their eternal nature, to see their soul's gifts, so that we can treat them as such. But when we treat them through judgment, through expectation, through the lens of the past, then it creates the conditions for a special relationship, which is the opposite of a holy relationship. which is pure unconditional love. Let me go back to share the screen for paragraph 7. There is indeed a difference between this vain imagining and vision. The difference lies not in them, but in their purpose. Both are but means, each one appropriate to the end for which it is employed. Neither can serve the purpose of the other, for each one is a choice of purpose, employed on its behalf. Either is meaningless without the end for which it was intended, nor is it valued as a separate thing apart from the intention. The means seem real because the goal is valued, and judgment has no value unless the goal is sin. So the vain imaginings that this paragraph is referring to is the lens of the past, that we use the past then to project into the future or to create a persona that is not them. Oftentimes when we're in relationship, we actually have created an ideal version of them. We have many thoughts about how they should behave, what they should say, how they should look, how they should treat their bodies, how they should apply themselves at work or at school. We have a lot of thoughts about it. And so once we start making our preferences, our ideas about how they should be more important than how they actually are, then we are totally lost, because we are so far away from seeing them for who they truly are and sharing God's vision. It actually perpetuates dis-ease of within the context of the relationship, lack of ease in the context of the relationship. When we feel the pressure of someone who wants us to be a certain kind of way, whether they speak to us directly or they infer that through their oftentimes passive aggressive type direction, we feel inside of us unaccepted and unseen. And so then this perpetuates this feeling of resistance and disconnection. So one of the practices then is to stop, to pause, to take a moment, especially when you have all these judgment thoughts about them, and to endeavor to practice seeing them as they are, looking at them without the past, without your expectations and ideas of how they should be, but rather seeing them as they actually are. When you start to see them for whom they actually are, then vision can take place where you actually see their innocence and you see their magnificence. And then from that place, once your perception has shifted, now they're free and they're safe to be able to balance and to be themselves, to heal, or to remember their holiness, because they will inevitably see their own holiness reflected in your eyes, because your eyes will reflect true vision. To that, let's continue with paragraph 8. The body cannot be looked upon except through judgment. To see the body is the sign that you lack vision and have denied the means the Holy Spirit offers you to serve his purpose. How can a holy relationship achieve its purpose through the means of sin? Judgment you taught yourself. Vision is learned from him who would undo your teaching. His vision cannot see the body because it cannot look on sin, and thus it leads you to reality. Your holy brother, sight of whom is your release, is no illusion. Attempt to see him not in darkness, for your imaginings about him will seem real there. You closed your eyes to shut him out. Such was your purpose, and while this purpose seemed to have a meaning, the means for its attainment will be evaluated as worth the seeing, and so you will not see. Let's continue for paragraph 9. Your question should not be, how can I see my brother without the body? Ask only, do I really wish to see him sinless? And as you ask, forget not that his sinlessness is your escape from fear. Salvation is the Holy Spirit's goal. The means is vision. For what the seeing look upon is sinless. No one who loves can judge, and what he sees is free of condemnation. And what he sees he did not make, for it was given him to see, as it was the vision that made his seeing possible. Okay, so we were given a specific direction. I love it when we are given a specific direction. So the specific direction is, as we meet our brothers and sisters in the world, ask only, do I really wish to see him sinless? And then as you ask, don't forget that his sinlessness, his innocence, which is his innocence. So as you ask, remember that his innocence is your escape from fear. Because as you see your brothers and sisters' innocence, you must see your own innocence as well, because you're the same, because we are the same. And so yeah, so for what the seeing look upon is sinless, for what the seeing look upon is innocent. And it feels like this, it helps create the pathway for unconditional love, because then the next sentence says, no one who loves can judge. So it's seeing without judgment, seeing without condemnation. Okay. All right. I think that's good. All right. So let's finish here and let's go back now to actually, let me share the screen again. So we're going to click on the home screen and now we're going to the lesson. So we're at lesson 38. And I'm going to have the narrator read it for us. And so let's begin.
Lesson 38. There is nothing my holiness cannot do. Your holiness reverses all the laws of the world. It is beyond every restriction of time, space, distance, and limits of any kind. Your holiness is totally unlimited in its power because it establishes you as a son of God, at one with the mind of his Creator. Through your holiness, the power of God is made manifest. Through your holiness, the power of God is made available. And there is nothing the power of God cannot do. Your holiness then can remove all pain, can end all sorrow, and can solve all problems. It can do so in connection with yourself and with anyone else. It is equal in its power to help anyone because it is equal in its power to save anyone. If you are holy, so is everything God created. You are holy because all things he created are holy, and all things he created are holy because you are. In today's exercises, we will apply the power of your holiness to all problems, difficulties, or suffering in any form that you happen to think of, in yourself or in someone else. We will make no distinctions because there are no distinctions. In the 4 longer practice periods, each preferably to last a full 5 minutes, repeat the idea for today, close your eyes, and then search your mind for any sense of loss or unhappiness of any kind as you see it. Try to make as little distinction as possible between a situation that is difficult for you and one that is difficult for someone else. Identify the situation specifically and also the name of the person concerned. Use this form in applying the idea for today. In the situation involving blank in which I see myself, there is nothing that my holiness cannot do. In the situation involving blank in which blank sees himself, there is nothing my holiness cannot do. From time to time, you may want to vary this procedure and add some relevant thoughts of your own. You might like, for example, to include thoughts such as, "There is nothing my holiness cannot do because the power of God lies in it." Introduce whatever variations appeal to you, but keep the exercises focused on the theme, "There is nothing my holiness cannot do." The purpose of today's exercises is to begin to instill in you a sense that you have dominion over all things because of what you are. In the frequent shorter applications, apply the idea in its original form unless a specific problem concerning you or someone else arises or comes to mind. In that event, use the more specific form in applying the idea to it.
Okay, so the idea for today's lesson is there is nothing my holiness cannot do. Holiness is the root of the word to heal because it comes through wholeness. So our wholeness is speaking to our holiness, which is that perfect divine spark, our perfect design as God created us, as we exist at one with the mind of the Creator. It's a reflection of the very question that I had on my pilgrimages. So the practice periods are longer, they're 5 minutes. We're invited to have 4 5-minute practice periods through the day. And in the practice period, we are to close our eyes and search our minds for any sense of loss or unhappiness of any kind. And then to say to ourselves, in this situation involving, and then say what the situation is, in which I see myself, there is nothing my holiness cannot do. And then as you are searching your mind, you can think of a situation that is difficult for someone else. And in that case, the sentence is in the situation involving, and say their name, in which they see themselves, there is nothing my holiness cannot do. There is nothing my holiness cannot do, because the purpose is to show that it is our light that heals. Then throughout the day, you can just practice the idea in the face of any relevant situation. And the sentence is, there is nothing my holiness cannot do because the power of God lies in it. So my holiness is God's holiness. My holiness is God's grace being lived through us if we allow it. I'm going to go ahead and share the screen again before I set the timer so that you can see the language. So I'll position the language here. I'm going to go back to share the screen. Where am I? Okay, let's share the screen. And just remember, as we prepare, this is a meditation practice. So just start to bring your awareness away from the fullness of your day, and just bringing your mind away from what's to happen next. So you're pulling your mind away from the past and reining it in from wandering out into the future, and just start to settle in, bring your attention to the breath. Perhaps take 3 conscious, naturally healing breaths here. When you're ready, you can go ahead and let your eyelids rest over your eyes. And I'm going to go ahead and start the timer to practice together for 5 minutes, starting now. And so just allowing difficult situations to arise in your mind, identify it, and then saying to yourself, in this situation involving, in which I see myself, There is nothing that my holiness cannot do. Searching your mind for difficult situations, situations that cause an unhappiness or a fear or a loss, and perhaps situations pertaining to others comes to mind. And in that case, you practice the idea in this way, in the situation involving my brother, in which my brother sees himself in this situation involving, and then describing the situation in which my brother, for example, sees himself. There is nothing my holiness cannot do. And just continue searching the mind and practicing the idea, applying the idea to what situations arise in the mind. Okay, so that is the timer. And so remember, you'll practice the idea throughout the day. You might include something like, there is nothing my holiness cannot do because the power of God lies in it. And so you can have fun with that. Okay, and so you will practice the idea again 4 times, 5-minute meditation periods, eyes closed, searching the mind. And then throughout the day, as it arises for you, you might come up with some thoughts of your own. For example, there's nothing my holiness cannot do because the power of God lies in it. There is nothing my holiness cannot do because a perfect idea can never leave its source. There is nothing my holiness cannot do because I am an expression of the Creator. Just making them up as we go along. All right, so I'm going to go back now to share the screen again so that we can look at our principle of miracles. So we're going back to the text, the meaning of miracles in chapter 1, principles of miracles in section 1. And we are looking at principle number 6. So if you like, you can go ahead and screenshot the principle and reflect on it also throughout the day. So principle number 6, miracles are natural. When they do not occur, something has gone wrong. And so what I love about this one is that it positions us to expect miracles in as much as we are a part of nature. We are not separate from nature. And so miracles are also natural. And so if they're not occurring, it must be because our mind is placed on that which is unnatural, that which is an illusion. And so how can we get ourselves back on track? How can we share God's vision? How can we align our minds and our little will with God's mind and God's will? All right. Well, thank you for joining with me again. I appreciate you following along with this journey to follow along in this experiment of exploring the Course in Miracles. I truly appreciate it. And before I go, I just want to remind you that in my experience, a meditation practice is helpful. And the Eastern healing arts are also miraculous and create the conditions for miracles. So on the third Tuesday of every month, I offer a mindfulness-based meditation class. You can register online through the website alilacenter.org. And then on the fourth Monday of the month, I offer a meditation and natural healing self-help class. And in that class, we practice a protocol for self-care and healing. And again, both classes are helping to create the conditions for miracles, to let things follow their natural order. So again, you can find the registration links on the website www.alilacenter.org, and you can join via Zoom. And if you happen to be in New Jersey, you can also join in person. All right. Have a great day and enjoy the lesson. Of course, if you have any experiences, ahas, or even resistance, feel free to share your experiences in the comments. I'm always interested to hear how it's going for you. And to that, I'll see you next time. Bye.